charged with terrorism here. Most of them are in jail, and I don't think we should give up so easily on our rule of law.
Congressman Paul, thank you very much. Now it is time.
All right, we're back, and as promised, we've got a very special guest with us this evening, Jim Rogers, who needs no introduction, but he's run big funds that have raised 4,200% over 10 years when the S&P went up 50%. He's obviously a best-selling author, and he's predicted much of what's now happening, but I don't want to put words in his mouth. I'd like him to break down what he's accurately predicted. I've got some of the news articles here and what he sees coming up in the future. His latest best-selling book is A Gift to My Children, A Father's Lessons for Life and Investing. Of course, you can also go to his website, Jim Rogers, that's ROGERS.com. And he's also a Guinness Book of World Record holder on multiple fronts. We'll get him to talk some about that. Now, he joins us here while he's on his exercise bike in the beautiful, I guess, semi-tropical environs of Singapore. And so we turn now to Jim Rogers joining us here at Infowars Nightly News. Jim, thank you for joining us.
I am delighted. And yes, it is Singapore. We're on the equator. In Singapore, it's either always hot or always hot and raining.
Well, I tell you, I've probably watched you 300 times on national television, Fox, CNBC, you name it, but I don't think I've ever seen you on a exercise bike. So we're honored that you're doing this with us.
Well, I'm delighted. I'm multitasking. I try to get two things done at once. So if I fall off the bike, you'll be the first to know.
Okay, Jim. Wow. Now, listen, there's a lot of stuff written in the press. I want to make sure this is accurate. A few days ago, a bunch of reports came out that you said global collapse, a done deal. What's your view on the world economy right now and where it's going?
Well, Alex, every 4 to 6 years in America, we've had a slowdown or a recession ever since the Republic, the beginning of the Republic. So we're overdue for one, the end of 2011, 2012, 2013. So it always happens. It's going to happen again, despite what politicians or central bankers tell you. The next time around, it's going to be very bad. Just as, 2002, we had a slowdown. 2008, it was much worse. 2012, 2013 is going to be worse still because we shot all our bullets. I mean, the U.S. cannot quadruple its debt again. We cannot print more money again, staggering amounts of money again. So it's going to be a mess, a huge mess. There's nothing we can do about it.
Now, let's talk about, because I know you don't like to toot your own horn, but I've printed up a bunch of news articles here. I remember you 3-4 years ago saying what they did wasn't going to work, that you'd see all sorts of currencies going down globally, that commodities was the place to go, and gold's gone from $300 to $1,800, silver's gone from $5 to $30+. You're saying get into farmland. Toot your own horn, though, just so people can understand why you made the predictions you did. Quite a bit of what you predicted's come true. Break down how you were able to make those predictions, and then what you see coming in the near future, and then even the medium term.
Well, Alex, partly because of I know what's happened before in the world. In the early 1990s, Japan had a problem like this. They refused to let people fail. They propped everybody up. You remember the term zombie banks, zombie companies? Well, it's 21 years later. Japan is still suffering because they didn't accept reality. They didn't take the pain. The Japanese stock market is down 80%. That's 80% in the last 21 years because they refuse to accept reality. America's going to have the same problem. We're going to try to prop everybody up. That does not work. In Sweden, at the same time, 21 years ago, in Scandinavia, I should say, they took the pain. It was horrible for 2 years, 3 years. But since then, after starting over, taking the losses, taking the pain, Scandinavia has had a wonderfully vibrant and dynamic economy. It just doesn't work to prop up failure, to reward incompetence. You have to, that's what capitalism's all about. Competent people come in, take over the failed assets from the failed people, and start over. What we're doing in America, we're taking the assets away from the competent people, giving them to the incompetent people, and saying, okay, guys, now you can compete with the competent people with their money. It's outrageous morality. Not that politicians care about morality, but it's horrible economics. It cannot and will not work.
Well, I'm certainly no rocket scientist. I mean, I'm not a guy that's made people tens of millions of dollars like yourself and, has a 30, 40-year track record of doing it. But studying economics, studying history, when you see a bunch of countries start basically turning up the printing presses and then paying for the garbage derivatives with more printing press money, it seems like I've seen all these third world countries go that direction. So correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, is that why basically you're saying that there's no way to turn this around? Or what are some of the other factors that feed into that?
Well, Alex, the cure for too much debt is not more debt. Although in Washington, they seem to think, well, we had too much consumption, too much debt. So let's solve that problem with more consumption and more debt. I mean, it's astonishing that grown-ups would say something like that out loud. If it were that simple, every country in the world would be prosperous. But what's always happened is you pile up debt, that fails, and then they start printing money. If all you had to do was pile up debt and print money, Zimbabwe would be the richest country in the world right now. Many countries would be extremely rich. It doesn't work. Economics is pretty simple. If you spend money you don't have, you either pay it back or go bankrupt or suffer the consequences. We've already had one lost decade in America. We're going to have 2, 3, 4. I don't know how many lost decades we're going to have until we accept reality.
Okay, then just to be clear, then, you are saying that a global financial collapse is a foregone conclusion, no way to turn it around, no way to stop it now?
Well, I'm saying yes. The next time we have a recession, and we're going to have one, I guarantee you, it's going to be worse than anything we've experienced in the last few decades because of the staggering amounts of debt that have been built up in the U.S. and in Europe. Now, there's a way. Sure, we could take an alternative course. We could accept reality. We could let people fail. All those guys on Wall Street should have failed. The idea that they're still driving their Lamborghinis is outrageous as far as I'm concerned. They're all getting their bonuses. Outrageous as far as I'm concerned. You and I are paying for it. We could do that. We could let them fail. We could take our pain, admit our mistakes. It would be very bad for 2 or 3 years, Alex. There's no question. It would be a mess. But the alternative is to have 10, 20, 30 years of more lost decades and lost years from our lives.
All right, Jim Rogers is our guest. We're honored to have him and a premiere interview with him on the exercise bike. I'm actually loving this. I think this is pretty media worthy. And again, we appreciate your time and joining us. Shifting gears to North America. I know you're out in Singapore now, and later I'll ask you why you're there and your prognosis in this global meltdown for Asia versus Europe, North America, Latin America, Africa, basically your global perspective and what you're investing in right now. But here at home, Ron Paul predicted all of this 30 years ago on sound Austrian economics. I know that you study a little bit as well. And now he is being demonized, and that's when he's lucky. They've done scientific studies now that show that he's getting the least amount of time at the debates, that when he does get coverage, it's negative, also when he wins first, second, or third place, Fox, MSNBC, CNN, now CBS will not show him in the poll rankings. So if he gets number 1, they say number 2 was number 1. Or if he gets number 3, they skip him and move number 4 into number 3. And we just caught CBS over the weekend doing it again. It became a national news story. But wait, it gets better. It was a 90-minute debate, Jim, but only an hour was televised. Of the televised debate, he was given 90 seconds. And it turns out a memo came out when Rick Perry was given, like 8 minutes, Mitt Romney more than 10. I mean, if this isn't a rigged horse race, what's your view on that and why they're scared of Ron Paul?
Well, it's clear, and I've read the same things you have, it's clear that they're biased against Ron Paul. I don't know why. I guess the only reason is because he's the only one who talks good sense. He's the only one who knows how to solve the problems. I happen to agree with nearly everything he said and have for a long time. And it's just so different to what all these journalists have been brought up reading and believing and writing. I mean, they all go to the same schools where they're taught Keynes and failure. And so they think that this guy who's got a different view must be, and let's ignore him. Unfortunately for them, he's the only one, not the only one, but he's one of the few who's got it right. And somebody, I don't know if the electorate will get it in time, but he's one of the few who knows what has to be done.
Jim, looking at history, looking at geopolitical movements, looking at finance that you've studied so long and investment so accurately, and that's the real gauge of a tree is its fruits. Your fruits have been very successful and stable over a long period of time. Well, seriously, looking into your crystal ball, I mean, and then looking at the United States, it's clear they're not going to listen to Ron Paul. He is the only one of those Republicans that is talking sense, and one of only a few prominent people in the U.S. talking sense. The establishment wants to go the same direction, crony capitalism, insiders being guaranteed by the public, so much you and Congressman Paul have talked about. And now the elite are financing the welfare class to be their political army to demand more and more off the tit. And I see historically real calamities, real collapse, real social unrest here in the U.S. Obama has already tried to sick the Occupy Wall Street people on the middle class, claiming, you know, that he's anti-corruption in Wall Street when he's financed by it. So what do you see for America and Europe? I mean, do you see a lot of really unstable things happening? Because it's clear they're not going to listen to you. They're not going to listen to Ron Paul. They know you're right. It's why they're scared of you. So is this ship going to hit the iceberg? What's going to happen? What do you see? Where do you see America in 5 years?
Well, first, there's also a guy named Gary Johnson who is running for nomination. He seems to get it, too, as well. I mean, he hasn't been as prominent so long as Ron has, but he also seems to get it. But what's going to happen? It's what I've said many times. There's going to be more social unrest all over the world. We've already had some governments fail and some countries fail. Alex, and a lot worse. As the price of food skyrockets, as the economy doesn't get better, more and more people are going to be in the streets. Unfortunately, we now have a generation worldwide which expects free lunches. And unfortunately, the money's running out now. We cannot afford free lunches anymore, and you're going to see turmoil. You're going to see currency turmoil. You're going to see more inflation, higher prices, higher interest rates. It's not going to be fun. Be careful, Alex. Be careful and be prepared.
Are you hinting at be careful being in America? Is that why you ran? I'm not saying you ran in a bad way. I'm tempted to run to Singapore or somewhere else. Is that why you've gone to Singapore? Because you have traveled the whole world. You've won the Guinness Book of World Record, you know, for traveling the world on a motorcycle, for traveling in a car. You've been all over the planet. Is that why you've decided to go to Singapore? Because I know my wife has said to me, she's pretty smart. She's like, we need to get the hell out of this country because we can't even travel. I mean, the TSA wants to stick their hands down my daughter's pants. They want to grab my wife's breast. And my wife said to me last week, she said, listen, this is turning into Nazi Germany, and we need to be smart enough to get out of here. And I said, well, I'm going down with a ship on air. And she said, okay. But, I mean, is that what you're hinting at?
Well, first of all, you can go down with a ship on air somewhere else now with the computers. I mean, here I am. I'm in Singapore, and you and I are having a perfectly competent and civilized conversation. That's not the reason I left. I'm sure maybe it had some factor. No, I have two little girls. They were speaking, they were Chinese because I'm convinced that the best gift that I can give my children is to know perfect Mandarin Chinese, and to know Asia. I couldn't do that in New York. I love New York. You know, I'm still an American citizen, still an American taxpayer, but I want to raise my children carrying them 21st century. I don't like what's happening in America. I hate it. Whenever I fly to America, I'm always a little bit worried because I know I'm going to have to go through American customs, American immigration, and I'm an American citizen. and I'm going to have to go with the TSA, and I'm always